Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Welcome to a webinar on dietary supplement traceability and serious adverse events reporting in the era of COVID-19, hosted by EAS Consulting Group and presented by EAS independent consultant Tamika Cafe. EAS, a member of the certified family of companies, is a leader in regulatory solutions for industries regulated by FDA. Our global network of over 150 independent advisors and consultants enables EAS to provide comprehensive consulting, training, and auditing services, ensuring proactive regulatory compliance. From regulatory strategy development, compliance assistance, preparation of technical submissions to FDA, and assurance of safety programs through planning, auditing, and training, EAS offers the detailed knowledge and experience your company requires to ensure accurate and timely assistance. Today's presenter is EAS independent consultant Tamika Cafe. Tamika consults with an international client base on regulations pertaining to safety and quality of dietary supplements, pharmaceuticals, and tobacco products. She conducts audits, risk assessments, and mock FDA and GMP investigations, and works to design improvement programs based on findings.
In wake of COVID-19 pandemic, a number of enforcement discretion measures have been put in place by FDA, one of which pertains to the reporting of serious adverse events for dietary supplements, which is in accordance of Dietary Supplement and Non-Prescription Drug Consumer Protection Act of 2006. And that requires the dietary supplement firms to submit all serious adverse event accusations to the FDA within 15 business days of receipt of that complaint. However, in light of COVID-19, there may result in an increased employee absenteeism and other situations that limit the company's resources. So FDA is temporarily allowing for storage of your your severe adverse events at dietary supplement firms months after normal operations are resuming. And that enforcement discretion is outlined in FDA Guidance for Industry, Postmarketing Adverse Event Reporting for Medical Products and Dietary Supplements under a Pandemic, which was issued March 2020. And we provide the link for you. Within the actual guidance, they specifically advise that normal serious adverse event reporting processes be maintained to the maximum extent as possible, and all adverse event data should be handled using your normal SOPs and regulatory statutory requirements for adverse event reporting. However, if this cannot be accomplished, you must establish a continuity of operation plan or a COOP. And we've provided a link for you and a guidance reference on how to create that continuity of operation plan. Now, the elements of that plan and the purpose of the plan is to ensure that a firm operates and they continue to operate during all stages of a pandemic. And the scope of that plan is provide instructions on how to report adverse events to FDA, and what is the submission plan for any stored reports not submitted in normal regulatory timeframes, because again, the pandemic is related to high employee absenteeism. And within that plan, there should have requirements when it comes to the following type of documentation that must be maintained. So one, there should be an official pandemic declaration that can come from, example, the World Health Organization, which includes statements about the pandemic, the date of declaration, and the end of the pandemic date. And also documentation when it comes to a statement or a document of high absenteeism or other factors that's preventing the firm from meeting normal adverse event reporting requirements. Now, keep in mind, even though FDA has provided this guidance as far as allowing for storage of serious adverse events, the expectation and current thinking is firms should maintain the highest feasibility level of adverse event monitoring and reporting. Also, firms should maintain records to identify what has been stored and when processes are to be restored. The guidance, however, does not apply to firms that are able to continue reporting operations, and standard regulatory reporting requirements are still in effect. Now, EAS guidance when it comes to COVID-19 is this. Though COVID-19 is altering some normal day-to-day business operations, firms, they cannot lose sight of their obligations under FDA to protect the consumer. And we strongly encourage firms to submit as many required SAE reports as possible, particularly those initial SAE reports or serious adverse event reports. And this will minimize reporting burdens once the adverse event reporting process is restored for your firm and is being restored back to a pre-pandemic state. If this is not feasible, then the firm must ensure that a robust complaint handling system is in place that allows for identification, traceability, investigation, and storage and submission of serious adverse events at a later date. So I'm actually going to recap those general regulatory requirements when it comes to serious adverse events and complaints. So what is an adverse event? It's any health-related event associated with the use of a dietary supplement. And that definition is coming directly from the FD&C Act, Section 761. A serious adverse event, again, coming from the Food and Drug Administration, from the Food and Cosmetic Act, Section 761, is a serious adverse event is an adverse event that results in a death, a life-threatening experience, an inpatient hospitalization, persistent or significant disabilities or incapability, or any kind of abnormal birth defect. And again, per the FD&C Act, they're saying that as a serious adverse event, you are required, based on reasonable medical judgment and medical and surgical intervention, to prevent an outcome described previously, which is a death, a life-threatening experience, or inpatient hospitalization. We provided examples of serious adverse events, and these are serious reactions and illnesses, but they are not all inclusive. I'm only going to highlight a few. It could be abnormal bleeding from the nose and gums, slurred speech or one-sided weaknesses of the face, difficult in urination, and decreased urination. These are examples of serious reactions to a dietary supplement and illnesses that could occur. Now, per the FD&C Act, again, Section 87761, it states, serious adverse events must be reported to FDA. They must be submitted within 15 business days after receipt of the complaint, and the report must include a product label along with any hospitalization or death records or relevant laboratory or clinical data. Any new medical information received within 1 year of original report must be submitted within 15 business days after the receipt. Now, who's required to report? Manufacturers, packagers, and distributors. And manufacturers, packagers, and distributors, they can report via the paper FDA Form 3500A or the FDA Safety Reporting Portal. Now, physician customers and anyone else who's a non-responsible entity that's not a manufacturer, packager, or distributor can also use the FDA Safety Reporting Portal if they know of a serious adverse event. Now, when it comes to record keeping, records for all adverse events must be maintained for 6 years, and records must be available during FDA inspections, and records must be maintained for serious adverse events involving discontinued dietary supplements. And that record keeping and that guidance is coming directly from FDA Guidance for Industry, and it's a question and answer series that we provided to you at the bottom of the slide. Now, what does it look like for 21 CFR Part 11, Subpart 0, when it comes to product complaints? The definition of a product complaint under 21 CFR 111.3 is any communication containing any allegation, written, electronic, or oral or expressing concern for any reason with the quality of a dietary supplement that could be related to current good manufacturing practices. Now, when it comes to a written procedure, under Part 11, 553, you must have written procedures regarding consumer complaints to fulfill the requirement within the section, and those written procedures must be followed. When it comes to review of investigation of product complaints, a qualified person must review all complaints to determine whether a complaint involves a possible failure to meet a specification or specifications, any requirements under 21 CFR 111, and may result in an illness or an injury. The qualified person must investigate any product complaint that involves a possible failure to meet any specification or requirement, which, if not met, may present a risk or illness or injury. And of course, those investigations must be extended to all relevant batches and records. Now, quality control person and their requirements is they must review and approve decisions about whether to investigate a product complaint, any findings, and also any kind of follow-up actions. Now, what is a compliant complaint handling system? It's going to look a little different because under COVID-19, there have been factors that have increased employee absenteeism, and or remote employee interface is actually going to be something that's going to be a challenge, that's going to face companies when it comes to maintaining a robust complaint handling system. But the first step to mitigate this challenge is to assess the current system to ensure that a written complaint handling procedure is in place. And that comes directly from 21 CFR 111 553. Within your SOP, you want to make sure that these basic elements are covered in order to make sure that you have a robust complaint handling system procedure. 1, instructions on the pathway or process flow of how complaints will be handled from intake all the way to closure. Identify person or persons responsible for evaluating and reviewing product complaints for escalation, and that means for further investigation. Quality control personnel, their authority to review and approve decisions, and instructions on how to ensure record retention systems will be for your firm. So i.e., is that going to be a paper or electronic? And how would that look for serious adverse events and complaints? In addition, there should be assigning the most responsible person for routing the complaint, assigning the complaint number, and ensuring appropriate traceability and follow-up. Persons responsible for evaluating and reviewing product complaints, again, up to escalation, and identifying functional groups or departments in order to perform investigation and risk assessment for those complaints. Outlining criteria for reportable events and also highlighting those reportable timeframes. And having requirements for the following. Making sure that rationales are documented for all decisions to include when the company has decided or firm not to investigate or initiate an investigation. And keeping record with reportable events and complaint investigations. Now, the basic steps when it comes to complaint handling is your intake phase, your investigational phase, and closure. The complaint intake phase of complaint handling is one of the most critical steps in assessing a product complaint because information is key. Probing and cascading questions during this initial intake process can assist firms to make actually concise and informed decisions on how to properly route, handle, trend product complaints in a timely manner. So that who, what, when, where, and how is very important when it comes to complaint intake and gathering as much information as possible, because that collected information is also used to determine whether events meet the threshold requirements for serious adverse event reporting and complaint investigation. And here's the overarching idea of triage of serious adverse events from an intake process. So as you receive your consumer complaint, you have to make the decision, is the event reportable? If the answer is yes, then you will report per regulatory requirements. If you're not sure or you're in doubt, pass that consumer complaint along to quality assurance or an SME for further evaluation. If the answer is no, then you have to document the rationale within the complaint file. Now, what are the requirements when it comes to documentation? You must keep records of any complaint, and you have to do that per subpart O and also P of 21 CFR 111. And you must keep the following type of records. So you must have a written procedure when it comes to consumer complaints, which I alluded to before, and written records of every complaint, which will include the name and description of your dietary supplement, the batch, the lot or control number if it's available, the date of the complaint, when it was received, the name, the address, and phone number of the complainant if it's available, the nature of the complaint, the reply of the complainant, and findings and follow-up. Additional documentation that should be placed in your complaint file should be decisions on the need to investigate or not, any CAPAs that are actually been taken, and any replies to any complainants, and any trending that you've done of looking at past complaints and seeing if there really is a trend towards non-GMP compliance, and any type of risk assessments that have been performed and what those risk assessment outcomes are should be in your complaint file. Now, there are three major levels of a complaint investigation or phases. So you have your level 1, which is that initial investigation. And during that phase, you're trying to figure out, is the complaint valid or not? Then you have phase 2 or level 2, which is investigate to a probable cause. And level 3 or phase 3, which is investigate to determine a root cause. Under COVID-19, when it comes to complaint investigations, the level 1 and portions of level 2 can be easier to determine if you have a cohesive SOP and you have reliable data that was collected during that complaint intake process. So even though your firms may have limited resources, if they have a strong, cohesive SOP and they have reliable data, then you can move forward with your investigational process. But there are some key factors that need to be included. So things that even under limited resources you can do is look at your prior knowledge of any kind of known complaint events and the trending history. Also looking at any prior CAPAs to see if there have been any corrections in the past that you know of a known event. If a complaint is being investigated by another third party, i.e. like a third party vendor or a CMO, that is important to know. Maybe they're doing the work and they can provide additional feedback and that can help you make the appropriate decisions. Is this a labeling issue? And knowing and known complaint events that actually could be tied to any kind of existing out of specifications, any deviations or non-conformances. And have you as a firm collected comprehensive data from a complainant to include a product actually being returned to you for further investigation. And complaints, you can actually determine if this is an isolated incident or a non-probable event that does not require further escalation from level 1. So for example, if you go through a comprehensive intake process and you determine that the complainant is talking about product that there's no way possible that you manufacture at your facility or distribute at your facility, then that's an example of maybe a non-probable event that you can determine that no further investigation or escalation is required. Now, some of the roadblocks that can be exhibited because of COVID-19 can be exhibited or displayed or seen during the phase 2 of an investigation if a firm has a paper document storage, that storage is on site versus having an electronic repository that you can easily assess. And some of those challenges when it comes to on-site paper storage could be review of batch records and looking at extensive batch records or looking at trends for related batches. If you're trying to do any kind of product retain review, then that can be a challenge. And any kind of on-site laboratory testing for return products, if that's something that you normally do, or any kind of retesting of out of specifications. Now, level 3 may pose the biggest challenge because if a probable cause or root cause cannot be determined because that's due to disruptions of record review or data, which could delay an effective CAPA decision. And again, that CAPA decision, if it's applicable. So traceability to link the complaint or the serious adverse event to the CAPA is key. And at this phase, and it could pose an additional delay again, if a CAPA is needed. So how can we resolve some of those roadblocks? Here are some solutions. Again, you can collaborate or have collaboration with your technical experts from your complaint handling program. They are going to know your process well, and if they have been involved in the complaint handling program, then they will know how to move forward and giving probable information and how to do an appropriate complaint investigation. Another resource is post-marketing surveillance of similar products, just to see have there been any complaints based upon what's already out in the market, and is it comparable to your product? That data is valuable. Review of product comparison studies can be also a solution in order to gather appropriate information. Scientific literature review, clinical studies, or even research and development data, and even contacting maybe an SME or technical expert, either someone that you currently employ or contract out as a firm. So any kind of physician, a medical liaison, a botanist or a chemist, for example, who could also give you additional information, feedback, and give you scientifically sound information. You can also look at social media and patient blogs to see, have there been any other complaints that are associated with the current one that you have? And then traceability of complaint number signage, along with any initiated CAPAs, will also be a solution. So if you can provide a complaint number signage and gather the information that is appropriate, then you're able to initiate a CAPA and assign that and tie it to that as well and continue on in your process. So these are actually just some tools that can be used to come up with scientifically sound rationale for probable cause determination, made along with the firms noting the business limitations due to COVID-19. So I'm going to say that again. You can use these solutions to help you come up with a scientifically sound rationale, but it's still important to note in a documented file of the complaint folder or file, stating that you had to use these solutions because you had limited business operations or limited personnel, and that was due to COVID-19. When it comes to record retention, now more firms are actually working remotely, and it's important to ensure that a secure electronic repository is being used to house written procedures, complaint files, serious adverse events, and any type of regulatory correspondence. And each complainant file folder, even though it's electronic repositories, can still be created, and it should be labeled with product name, the complaint number or number of complaint numbers. Any subfolders within that major folder should be labeled with any kind of corresponding kappas or associated supportive records or result. And you can also keep a record log within those electronic folder repositories in order to ensure that linkage and traceability is occurring. And common electronic repositories that are actually being used and can be assessed in a secure way are Dropbox, for example, Google Docs, and SharePoint. But keep in mind, firms that actually move from a paper to electronic repository must keep Part 11 compliance in mind and ensure that records cannot be manipulated or destroyed. Common electronic repositories like Dropbox and SharePoint are more secure than Microsoft Word or Excel, and it allows for secure storage up until a serious adverse event reporting is required, i.e. 6 months after relaunch of normal activities. Data that's actually stored in electronic repositories, especially if you already have it from a paper standpoint, are temporary. So when you reintegrate those records into your normal record retention process, that must be considered. And you must consider it once post-pandemic operations when they resume. So remember, document in a procedure or a record if you are moving from a paper to electronic repository due to COVID-19. Again, my name is Tamika Cathay, and you're more than welcome to reach out to me directly through my email for any other further questions with this or anything else that we can, as EAS, can support you. So my email address is my first name, last name at easconsultinggroup.com. And you can also get in contact with EAS Dietary Supplement and Tobacco Service Senior Director, Tara Couch, and her email is tcouch@easconsultinggroup.com. Again, thank you for your participation and listening in. And if there are any questions, I am opening up those questions now.
Great, thank you so much, Tamika. I'm just gonna go back to this page, so if anyone wants to jot down the addresses, you're welcome to. We do have a couple of questions that have come in. And the first is there any requirement to inform the complainant of the delayed reporting to FDA?
Okay, Amy, repeat that one more time. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Is there any requirement to inform the complainant of the delayed reporting to FDA due to COVID-19 of the serious adverse event?
When I reviewed the FDA guidance, they have not addressed that. And that's the one for March 2020. So there is no associated with that. The focus with that particular guidance document really is for firms who are responsible for reporting.
Okay. Let's see. Next question is a little bit long. With COVID-19, is it still recommended to have a product related to the SAE and AE returned to the company, especially something that has entered the consumer's mouth like a tincture dropper?
Actually, that is a good question. That's something I will think on, but I will say this just on a surface level. And again, I have no problems with having Amy, if you have a point of contact, they can always email me and we can talk about it further. But at this point, the reason in the PowerPoint I provided, if a product is returned, it gives you as a firm an opportunity to possibly, if you need to, send it out to a third party for testing. Because right now, as everyone is being remote, they won't have the opportunity to look at retains or having someplace else that they can start as a starting point. So, and it gets tricky because you have to be careful. And I think what I'm hearing is the concern of if this has already been in someone's mouth and there's a possibility of being exposed. So what I will do is let me think on that further. And if you can provide me that contact information, Amy, or they can contact me, we can
Sure.
always jump in and look at it from several different angles to make sure that we're providing the best answer for that. But it's a great question.
Okay. Great, thank you, I appreciate that. Another question, if the most responsible person is out, how do you determine who would be the, I guess, most appropriate person after that?
And when they say the most responsible person, they mean within the firm's complaint handling system, or the person who is actually responsible for reporting serious adverse events. I'm going to assume it's the person who's responsible for reporting serious adverse events. My take would be to employ someone else, a designee, who is already within quality to step in to do that. You usually have your main person and then a secondary person, and it should be deferred to them, and that person should be in the quality space.
Okay, great. Any other questions coming in? We'll just wait a few seconds, and Darcy, thank you. I'll pass your email address on to Tamika. Okay, I don't see anything else coming in. So thanks everyone very much in the audience for joining us today. I hope that you found this information really informative and helpful as you set up your traceability programs in light of COVID-19. Our next webinar in the series of how to handle a variety of FDA concerns in light of the pandemic is on Thursday, I think it's Thursday, the 28th, I think that's a Thursday, supplier qualification for dietary supplements in the era of COVID-19. That one is presented by our Senior Director, Tara Couch. And today's webinar was recorded, so we'll have it up on the EAS website shortly. I'll let everyone know when it's up, and that way you're able to review at your convenience. So thanks everyone again, and thank you so much, Tamika, for a really good presentation. And of course, as always, please let EAS know if we can help you and with your traceability programs or confirming your 21 CFR Part 11 compliance or any other regulatory needs. Thank you so much.